Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Lemke, and this is my Week 3 presentation for PAD 453. Today we'll cover separation of powers and how agencies under the executive branch can make law, and several landmark cases that illustrate the limits of delegation. This presentation is organized into three main parts. First, I'll explain the separation of powers between legislative, executive, and judicial branches. Then I'll discuss how agencies under the executive branch exercise rulemaking authority that resembles lawmaking. Finally, I'll walk through several landmark cases that show how courts define and limit this authority. Separation of powers. The Constitution establishes three branches of government. Article 1 gives gives Congress the power to make laws. Article 2 gives the President and the executive branch the duty to enforce those laws, and Article 3 gives the judiciary the authority to interpret those laws. While these roles seem simple in practice, they constantly overlap through checks and balances such as veto power, judicial review, and congressional oversight. This week's lecture and these videos highlighted here show that this framework is meant to prevent concentration of power while ensuring each branch works together to govern effectively. How agencies actually make law. Agencies are all part of the executive branch, most of them are, but Congress creates them through enabling legislation. This legislation gives agencies their mandate, their structure, and their authority. Agencies can act in a quasi-legislative role when they issue rules and regulations to carry out broad laws like environmental or safety standards. Agencies also act in quasi-judicial role when they hold hearings or resolve disputes through administrative law judges. For example, as the videos and lectures explain, the EPA may set detailed pollution limits because Congress lacks the technical expertise to define those standards. This rulemaking process is how agencies effectively make law, even though they're rules and regulations rather than statutes. Landmark court cases. Several landmark cases help define the boundaries of delegation. In the Schneider-Poultry versus United States in 1935, the Supreme Court struck down parts of the New Deal, saying Congress gave away too much unchecked power to agencies, violating the non-delegation doctrine. In INS versus Chadha in 1983, the court ruled that the legislative veto was unconstitutional, reaffirming that Congress must use bicameralism and presentment to act. And then finally, in Chevron versus the NRDC in 1984, the court established that Chevron doctrine were courts deferred to agencies' reasonable interpretations of ambiguous laws. Together, these cases show how courts balance the need for agency flexibility with constitutional limits. So in conclusion, separation of powers is the foundation of the U.S. Constitution. But agencies play a critical role in filling in the details Congress cannot address. Through rulemaking and adjudication, agencies effectively make law guided by enabling legislation. Landmark court cases like Schneider, Poultry, Chadha, and Chevron show both the potential risk of overdelegation and the judicial tools used to keep agencies within constitutional boundaries. The challenge for the future is maintaining the right balance between democratic accountability and the expertise agencies provide. Thank you for taking the time to view my presentation. Here are my references for this week. Thank you.